If you understand the pattern of the union of opposites, the joining of heaven and earth in particular, you understand individuation and the highest version of it. You understand the most all-encompassing form of self-actualization, self-overcoming through the process of exercising not the will to power so much as the will to truth and higher meaning, which involves that will to power, at least in part. This sometimes seemingly unattainable process and goal is called a number of things, including theosis and deification from an Orthodox perspective, salvation, that is, sozo, to make whole, from a Catholic and general Christian perspective, or becoming one with God, embodying the Logos. This is the union of opposites in the highest, most abstract and metaphysical sense, right? This is heaven joining with earth, the masculine with the feminine, animus and anima, order and chaos, logic and emotion, and so much more, all wrapped up in those four simple words: heaven joined with earth. And before we dig too deep into this, I need to explain something. In the same way that there's order and chaos at all levels of reality, that is, you can see the pattern of order and chaos and hopefully the balance or joining of the two in your everyday life as an individual, you could see the same pattern all the way up. From you to your family, to your community, to the state, to the country, to the world, and even to the cosmos as a whole, including the collective unconscious and the multiplicity of archetypes, the invisible realm of that abstract other. In the same way, the patterns of heaven and earth, as explained here by Jordan Peterson and Pageau, exist at all levels, from the micro to the macro. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Here's a foundational clip from Jordan Peterson to get us started.
Well, and the thing that I think is so relevant in all of that, the prime issue of relevance, is the issue of what John Vervaeke, the cognitive scientist, has been calling relevance realization. We have the problem of what to focus our attention on. And that's actually an unbelievably pervasive problem, and a deep problem, because
this relevance realization, you've probably heard Jonathan Pageau, Jordan Peterson, or Vervaeke talk about a lot these days, is basically a way of talking about how our brains figure out what's important. In the world around you right now, for example, there are thousands of things, millions of things you can see, smell, touch, hear, way too many things to take in all at once. Your brain has to blind itself, essentially, to most of it, filtering the multiplicity down into a singular focus, choosing only the most important things to focus on. When I fly fish for smallmouth bass, my purpose, my end goal, or telos, is to catch a bass. Or maybe it's to provide fresh, healthy meat for my family, or to relax and meditate in the beauty of nature, or all of the above. But when I fish, my ultimate purpose in that moment is to catch that fish. So I use a fly that mimics the insects and the fish that they like to eat. Streamers are my favorite. My brain helps me figure out what fly to use by aiming, by directing my attention to the patterns that will help me fulfill my end goal, like the size and color of the bugs in the water, the fish the bass are chasing, where the bass are surfacing to eat bugs, etc. This process of paying attention, setting my aim on the things that matter, which are the things that fulfill my purpose of catching fish, and ignoring the things that don't matter, is called relevance realization. If I set my aim properly, it helps me catch more bass. And that's just a simple fishing example, but this applies to everything in life. What you aim at in life is what you get through this process of relevance realization.
there's an infinite multiplicity of phenomena that we could attend to, and combinations of phenomena that we could attend to in such massive numbers that it's very difficult to understand how we don't become overwhelmed. And the way we don't become overwhelmed is that we impose something like a point on things. And a point is the point of our perceptions and the point of our actions. And the point, in the ultimate sense, is also the ultimate thing towards which we're striving. And that ultimate thing towards which we're striving is as far as I can tell, elucidated in no small part in the biblical cosmology, because it's an attempt to lay out the characteristics of the spirit that would orient us towards the highest good as we go about our job of perceiving the complex world and acting in it. And so the words heaven and earth, as quoted in the verse above, which was, in the beginning God created the heaven and the earth, can no longer refer to what we now call heaven and earth from our scientific viewpoint, the third planet from the sun and its atmosphere. Instead, the archaic concept of earth refers to the lower material half of the entire universe, and the archaic concept of heaven refers to the upper spiritual half. The world of experience, which is the reality that we know, and the only reality we know, has a material half and it has a psychological half that's conceptual. And there has to be a union between the conceptual half, the half that exists in abstraction, and the half that exists concretely. And it isn't obvious that the abstract half is any less real or perhaps any more real than the material half. And so the description of the cosmos in Genesis is a Taoist-like description that assumes order and chaos in some fundamental sense and the meaningful interaction between the two. And your claim is that not only is that a more comprehensive description of reality, it's also a necessary description of reality to stave off such phenomena as a kind of corrosive nihilism.
To properly orient ourselves in the world, we need to set our aim properly and ultimately join heaven and earth. Higher knowledge and experience, order and chaos, masculine and feminine, etc. And as Pageau mentions later, Jung's joining of the opposites, specifically order and chaos, it's not a perfect understanding of joining heaven and earth, but it's basically the ultimate joining of the opposites, and there's a lot of overlap there.
It's actually difficult to understand the concept of heaven, I would say. I wouldn't even use the word order necessarily, although I understand why you use that word. It's hard to find an adequate word for it. And similarly, the earth, I also have trouble with the word chaos for different reasons. And I also understand though why you use that word, because I don't really have a better expressions to use. There's always a little bit of something missing in any word that's chosen to describe these concepts. But I'd say the best way I describe it, in my view, is the earth presents itself as a riddle. So in a sense, it's related to chaos in the sense of being unordered, but more in the sense of being meaningless. Because you can have an ordered reality that's still meaningless. You see the distinction I'm making? Something can be extremely ordered, but have no meaning to it, have no higher purpose to it or no higher meaning to it. And similarly, something can be chaotic and you can still see it as a meaningful experience. So, but I understand why you use the words chaos and order. I completely understand. I don't have necessarily better words.
Well, I wouldn't identify meaning with chaos or order either. It looks to me that meaning is actually the instinct that emerges to signify, in your terminology, the proper union of heaven and earth. And I do think that's how we experience it, because when we're engaged in something deeply meaningful, hopefully like this conversation, then we have a sense that everything is in its proper place and in balance, and we lose our self-consciousness and we lose our sense of time. Right? We lose our self-conscious neurotic preoccupations in the immersion in the moment. And there's something that's deeply paradisal about that.
So interestingly, what Jordan Peterson is describing here is basically the flow state, a mental state where you're completely immersed in an activity, feeling energized, focused, fully present. It's that feeling of being in the zone or losing yourself in your work or an activity. It's when time flies by because you're so caught up in the moment. That's the feeling you get when heaven joins with earth, symbolically speaking. When you're balancing effectively between the worlds of order and chaos. That is, there's enough chaos, potentiality, spontaneity, risk, or danger to make it a truly engaging challenge, but not so much that it overwhelms you. There's enough order for you to feel, well, ordered, within the bounds of your area of competence, in control. A very minor example is the feeling you get when you go just fast enough in your car to get a rush of excitement without feeling like you're taking on too much danger, or when you're in the ring sparring or fighting someone close to your level of cardio strength and skill but not close enough to make you feel out of control. Carl Jung wrote a lot on this subject and similar subjects. In my own words, he basically said that the union of opposites is the symbol of the goal of the individuation process, right? The integration of the personality, the goal of the individuation process is symbolized by the Unus Mundus, the one world in which the opposites are united, the unification of mind and matter, heaven and earth. This unification and realization is the ultimate goal of the psychological process, and the flow state follows the balancing and joining of the opposites in a person's mind and actions. You can see this as an expression of the unus mundus, the world in which the opposites are united.